Littlehales is our next presenter, and he's going to talk to you about the one thing that has the greatest impact on your health: sleep.
Lots of myths and misunderstandings, get your 8 hours, see you tomorrow. One of the major health pillars, very much the third or fourth health pillar.
They're a little bit hesitant to make changes. There's so many things that are happening in our lives right now that are beyond our control.
One of the leading contributing causes of death and disability in industrialized countries is high blood pressure and its consequences, the heart attacks and strokes.
If I have anything, I try 3 days of fasting. And if it doesn't get better, I consider a treatment.
Practical demonstration of what I want to share with you today, which is breathwork.
Probably I would estimate me to be around 16 years old, and my mother had psoriasis, just a small amount on her elbows.
Helps with inflammation. It helps with there's so many medical benefits associated with cold exposure.
We're going to begin with the first element, which is water.
Today we're going to talk about memory. It's a very hot topic, and I am very passionate about helping people improve their memory and age healthfully, cognitively, physically, and socially.
Nick Littlehales is our next presenter, and he's going to talk to you about the one thing that has the greatest impact on your health: sleep. Nick is recognized as the world's first and leading elite sports sleep coach, probably the world's first ever sleep coach. And he's regarded as a leading human recovery innovator. He has over 35 years experience within the sleep and sleeping product industry and over 22 years dedicated to elite sport. His unique, passionate, and proven approach is endorsed by leading sports science professionals, managers, coaches, organizations in sports, and now business, health, and education worldwide. Nick is the author of the groundbreaking and revolutionary #1 best-selling book, Sleep. Nick, welcome. Sorry for all the problems, but very excited to have you here.
It's my pleasure. I'm a little bit naked without my visual slides and everything else, but welcome to the session. We'll try and keep within the time. I think for everybody listening, some 2 decades ago, I started to look at how I could redefine what something was very much taken for granted called sleep. Lots of myths and misunderstandings, get your 8 hours, see you tomorrow. One of the major health pillars, but very much the third or fourth health pillar, when it should be the first. So the little technique that we have built up over those 2 decades called the R90 technique, it's about recovery in 90-minute cycles. The reason for 90-minute cycles is because if you're in a clinic and looking at the various stages and brainwave patterns during your course of sleep, you'd measure that in a 90-minute cycle and then benchmark that against the next 90-minute cycle. Strangely enough, when you look back, humans have always slept in what's called a polyphasic manner, which is multiple times during the 24 hours, not just one block called monophasic at night. So when you start looking at the 90-minute cycles and benchmarking it, 5 90-minute cycles gives you 7.5 hours. That's where the sort of 8 comes from. 30-odd% of 24 hours. You can look at polyphasic sleeping, which means you can sleep in a biphasic, triphasic, multiphasic way, which is more natural if you're more synchronized to the circadian rhythms of the day. So once you start looking at those things, there's other things like chronotypes, which is whether you're a morning type or a night timer. That's a little phase delay of about 2 hours on the production of a hormone called serotonin, which is developed through blue light from daylight into a little pineal gland in your brain. And that unsuppresses, tells your brain to do everything, become active and fully human and functional. So the little journey really, when you start to look at human beings on this planet and this subject called sleep, is a whole process of just being resynchronized with something that's completely natural. The sun rolls around our planet. It creates light, dark, and temperature shifts. It does it all the time. It has no relationship to 24 hours as a clock. It has no relationship to Monday through to Sunday in the days of the week. It just simply rolls around our planet, and it triggers everything that goes on our planet, including human beings. But human beings think they're clever and smart. So they've been introducing things like light bulbs and electricity, which started to make us focus on this one block monophasic sleep when we always used to sleep in a multiphasic way. We started to create things like daylight saving time, which only 60% of the countries around the world are affected by this, which is a shift in the clocks in the seasons. But over 80% of the population are not affected by this. And it was only created in World War I years, not for human performance or activity. There's other things like technology and 24/7 that's come along in the last few decades, which continues to challenge this process. So what we're all about, sleep is a very natural process, an extremely natural process. You don't need to force it, you don't need to try and do it, but you just need to get a little bit more synchronized with this natural rhythm of the day, and particularly about light. Inside of daylight, there is this blue energy wave called blue light. That triggers this hormone called serotonin. And that serotonin, as I said, unsuppresses everything. So when you start to look at a rolling 24/7 process, rather than how am I going to sleep on Monday or how am I going to sleep on Tuesday, is you start to get into a little pattern. So where we start is you need a consistent start to your day, a consistent wake time, mainly the consistent start to the day. When you put that in place, chop your day up into 90-minute cycles. That will give you a series of 16 stages throughout the 24 hours, through the 4 phases of the day. And it starts to give you a nice little subconscious way of what you do, why, and when, and particularly post-sleep. This is the period that kicks off the next 24 hours. As the sun rises and that light hits you, if you're outside, amazing, but we spend most of our time inside in bedrooms, then you really need a strong exposure to light. And it's way stronger than any light you've got around your homes. If you're outside all the time, exposed to around 100,000 lux, which is the way you measure light, lumens. So that's why it's getting outside and being active outside makes so much sense, because you're outside with this light. And it stimulates this hormone. As you're into midday and into sunset, it goes away. Now, when you go into sunset, you're into diminished light. And diminished light creates a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin tells the brain to suppress everything. Now, that's candlelight, blue light, that's candlelight, red light, amber light, gaslight, anything like that, firelight, all that sort of stuff, just not blue light. So when you've chopped your day up into 90-minute cycles from a consistent start time, you can look at what you're specifically doing in that first sort of 90 minutes of your day in an unrushed approach. Now, maybe you haven't got 90 minutes or anything else, or maybe you're a PMer, a nighttime chronotype, and have to drag yourself into the world. The AMers seem to do it really well. They just wake up and crack on. That's because of the early serotonin development. So when you start to look at it a little bit differently, what we do is we talk about the 7 key sleep recovery indicators. And that are the 7 steps. And in each little area, you can make a little marginal gain, a little aggregation of something, practical and achievable things, right? Not major things, because this is a natural process. So number 1 is tap it in your browser and look at the circadian rhythms. It's happening all around you every day. And the more you can just synchronize your everyday behavior towards that process, which is simply about exposure to light from the point of wake into midday, into the 3rd phase, early evening, and then shifting towards a melatonin world and on your way towards sleep. It's helping your brain be more synchronized with something that it wants to be synchronized with. Otherwise, it's constantly adapting, making adjustments. So when you try to go to sleep and fall asleep, your brain takes over because you're not in control of it. So your brain takes over, tries to take you through all these wonderful sleep stages and all that sort of stuff, but invariably is compensating like mad. So the thing to do is to get that consistent start to your day, big exposure to light, keep that process going throughout the first 2 phases of the day, and then really take the pressure off the third phase, the evening. So it's an unrushed approach. So you're trying to help your brain help you in that process. The other areas that you can start to look at is circadian rhythms is number one. Number two is your chronotype, whether you're a morning type or a night timer. I seem to believe through all the sort of stuff that I've been doing that there's more nighttime people on this planet than there are morning people. But we live in a morning people's world. So the AMers find it really easy to get up and crack on with their day and do their stuff. But the PMers tend to drag themselves into it. And they like the evenings. They like staying up beyond 12 o'clock at night. So all these little factors which are misunderstood is we create behavior, we create a random approach that doesn't actually reveal good quality of sleep at all. So we worry about it. And strangely enough, the biggest disruptor for being able to sleep naturally is worry, whatever level that might be in your own particular approach. Wake up in the morning, go on for so many hours, there's only so many hours left, and you worry about what you're going to feel like tomorrow morning, or how many awakenings you're going to have, or you're going to wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to get back to sleep. So this little technique of a consistent wake time, chop your day up into 90-minute cycles, create those 4 phases, create those 16 stages, you can start to have what's called a mental and physical recovery activity program alongside your mental and physical activity as well. But you're really trying to synchronize and help your brain through that process with little short, tiny micro breaks every 2 minutes, for nothing more than a couple of minutes every 90 minutes. And that's just looking in a different direction, pointing your brain at something else, because it creates different emotions and different reactions. Just doing little things, whether it's outside or inside, little lamps on your desk to create that level of light that keeps that serotonin level up. So what we see in human performance and why sleep is so important is that all the things like motivation, mood, awareness, alertness, reaction times, appetite, bowel and bladder, anything that's going on in your body, if it's more synchronized with this process in this simple way, then basically we operate in a much better way, and we can sleep better, we can recover better, and make that process much better for everybody. A lack of education is at the heart of why we take sleep for granted. It's not a performance criteria, but we stopped doing that in sport a long time ago. So the key sleep recovery indicators: number one, tap it in your browser, circadian rhythms. Number two, identify with your chronotype. It's a genetic twist. Your friends, your family, everybody who influences your life, spot it and see how you can manage that a little bit better, because it's what you do, why and when, that reveals good quality recovery sleep. Number three is sleeping cycles. I've already touched on that. It's more natural to sleep in a multiphasic way, particularly biphasic. So chop your day up into 90-minute cycles from a consistent wake time, create the sleep times, think about 5 cycles a day equals 7.5 hours. So if you're like me, I'm a morning type, so my consistent start to my day is 6:30, and I've got 5 90-minute cycles, which takes me back to 11 o'clock. So suddenly I can start to see how everything's working and how I can plan pre-sleep and post-sleep periods and little breaks all along that route, so I can maximize my quality of sleep. So all of that is there. The next step is pre and post. A lot of people focus on pre-sleep. It's too late, right? The thing about pre-sleep is all about light to dark, warm to cool, decluttering, bowel and bladder. These are the key melatonin factors of unsuppressing as you wander towards your targeted sleep time. If these factors aren't being generated or achieved, then you're going to struggle while you go into sleep, because your brain takes over. I always focus on post-sleep, and this is the consistent start to your day, and that is about recreating sunrise, whether you've got a little dawn-like simulator lamp in your bedroom because you've got blackout, that recreates that process for you to give you that stimulus to the day. Basically, making sure you've got time through getting that daylight, getting that lamp to create it. So you've got your appetites up, you've got bowel and bladder, you want to be fueling up and hydrating, little mental challenges. So in my world, I start my day at 6:30, get all this sort of stuff, and I don't become an elite sports sleep coach until 8 o'clock or beyond. Because I want to make sure that I've taken myself out of a sleep state into a full wake state. It doesn't matter how well I've slept. That's what I'm thinking about. It's creating a rhythm and a pattern to my everyday. So my best 5 a day for everybody is get your 5 cycles in. Because if you make it your first health pillar, then everything else you try and do will just make more sense, and you'll get more benefits from it. And that's why we create the difference in sport, is we get more out of nutrition, get more out of training, get more out of our exercise, get more out of our mental and psychological training, because we're recovering as a first pillar better, so everything else flows out of it. When you really concentrate on your post-sleep, you start to get a little bit of a subconscious approach to timings, recoveries. We call them CRPs, controlled recovery periods. Napping is just a reflection of a poor approach. It happens randomly. You just fall asleep. But a controlled recovery approach means that you now feel a bit more in control about you're being more productive, you're getting more energy, you're getting more motivation, and you actually seem to be sleeping less in some respects, but your recovery activity is going through the roof. When it comes to your environment, when we come down to sort of number 6 out of the 7, we put far too much emphasis on these bedrooms. Basically, you can sleep anywhere, anytime, in any place, on anything. I coach people sleep on the floor, up the side of mountains, all over the planet, northern, southern hemisphere. So when you sort of come to your environment, basic principles is try and think about bringing the outside in. Not all the cold and the rain and that, but it's all about the visualization. If we go out into the woods, camping or mountaineering, whatever it might be, into the mountains, by the lakes and everything else, we get so much more synchronized with the circadian rhythms. We feel happier, more productive, and all we're doing is sleeping on the floor in a tent. So what you want to do is try to imagine taking everything out of your bedroom in your head, and then sort of going, well, it's the only reason I call it a bedroom is because there's a bed in it. I don't call the kitchen a cooker room. I don't call the lounge a sofa room, right? So if you think about taking everything out in your head and then putting back what actually is there to help you recover, because this is a sleeping room. So wherever you have to sleep, whatever your bedroom is like, whatever your property like, whatever your home is just try that little process, because it's about good natural visualization. It's about good smells, good sounds. It's about nothing overstimulating. It's about low tech. It's about totally comfortable. As comfortable as you can possibly make it. It's about light. If you've got blackout, you need light to wake you up, because it's difficult to wake up in the dark. And also things like partners. Yes, human beings sleep together, but it's not designed to, right? So they love the sex and the spooning and the cuddling and the security and the family and the parenting and all that sort of type of stuff. But when they're actually sleeping together, they turn away from each other, create their own little space, and I'll see you later on. So the size of your mattress, the this, the that, there's 2 people with different profiles. So these bedrooms become sort of sanctuaries to go to sleep in, but actually there's far more counterproductive things inside most people's bedrooms than they actually realize. So just try that process, is great. And when it comes to your products, which is number 7, in the 7 KSRIs, it's very simple. It's all about human stuff, right? It's circadian rhythm. It's about the sun going around the planet. It's about serotonin and melatonin. It's about a balanced recovery and activity approach. It's trying to reveal that natural process. It's trying to defuse the worry and the anxiety that's created by every day, so you can maximize all the positive stuff and protect yourself from the things that you're out of control of. So when it comes down to product, again, there's loads of fancy stuff out there. big fat things that do all this sort of stuff, right? And promises of trials and you'll sleep brilliantly on this and all that sort of stuff. But in isolation, that ain't going to work. So there's a natural thing. Sleeping on the opposite side to your dominant side in a fetal position. So you're on your less sensitive side. You're protecting your heart and your genitals. You're also got your strongest side, your dominant side. So if you're ambidextrous, the one you're going to hit me with, right? Your right side is available to protect yourself. So even in your little bedroom, covered up with your duvets, fetal position on the opposite side to your dominant side. I'm right-handed, so that means left side, curled up in a little fetal position, protecting myself and making sure that I am in a place where my brain, when my brain takes over, is happy to take me into those wonderful stages of sleep, and particularly deep sleep. The deep sleep bit is when I can come into your bedroom and I can play with your hair and you won't know I'm there. If you're in light sleep stages, I wouldn't even get through your front door. Now, your challenge for your approach from the point of wake throughout your day, as we've been talking about, is to get this rhythm and balance and harmony helping your brain. Because when the brain takes over, it's a bit like being at the top of a set of stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs is this deep slough. It's only about 15, 20% of any period anyway, so it's easily missed. But this stuff is what you want. Every recovery stage is fine. It gives you an ability to be active, as a human being. The stuff you want is at the bottom of the stairs. So as you go to the top, your brain takes over and it starts to wander down the stairs. It'll start to do all sorts of things like, are you still digesting food? Is your partner still tweaking the legs? What about the light? What about the sound? What about this? What about that? And invariably, it'll just go, I'm not going to take you down into the most vulnerable stage of sleep, which is called deep. So it'll just keep you in light sleep stages. So that's where your challenge is. It's to not waste valuable time sleeping without benefits. It's just to redefine it the best way you can. Try to put across that today with you without some supporting documents. But if you are interested in all how easy this is to change your life, then get in touch, because it's certainly not difficult to change the way you approach recovery.
Thank you, Nick, and I apologize again that the slide did not work. Let's see, do we have any questions in the chat? I do have a couple of questions. One, you did touch on, I guess you're not a big fan of napping. I'm a napper. So I'm curious on, obviously, implemented better recovery at night so that I don't need the naps during the day, but being perimenopausal and waking up with the night sweats, I'm a napper. Is there a way to maximize my nap time?
No, it's just changing the language, right? What it is if you just sort of like get to your day off or your weekend and fall asleep on the sofa, or whatever it is, you're sort of napping without any thought process. So it's not the term napping, right? It's like, are you in control of it? Are you doing it for a reason, right? Right. That's why we change it to a controlled recovery period, because if we're saying we're going to have a nap period of 30 minutes where we're quite happy to go into a sleep state, and we're going to do that late afternoon every 24 hours as part of our overall approach, whether we sleep or not, it's a controlled period. What napping suggests to most people is that every now and again, you'll fall asleep in front of the telly, or on a train, or, traveling, or sort of that graveyard slot in business is kind of like a little nap when you just lose consciousness of what's around you just after lunch. So it's not, it's taking the emphasis away from what actually a nap means to most people, and that is falling asleep randomly throughout any 7-day period.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, my nap time is very purposeful. It is to regain my energy for my second half of the day, and it's usually always at the same time. And
you're not napping. You have a controlled recovery period every day to part of your overall process. To different language.
I am absolutely going to change my language around that. Now, can you tell us a little bit before we let you go? And you did touch on the value and how important it is, but just how big of a difference have you seen sleep make in the athletes that you've worked with?
I think once it's not making things up, right? But it is. It's just you saw all these factors working in the sleep industry and working around professors and clinics. I'm not academic, I'm not clinical, but I was involved in that whole thing. And I just thought, well, obviously there's certain factors that do affect this process. But as long as people start using the word naps and sleep, which just means go to bed at night and get your 8 hours, it's not a performance criteria. It's still taken for granted. It is a health pillar, but it's not focused on like nutrition or exercise. So it's just like in a lost little world. So let's pick all the things out and see if we can put it together. So the answer to your question is, once we started to redefine it, like 5 90-minute cycles is 7.5 hours. 90 minutes is the way you do it in a clinic to measure brainwave patterns. So certainly we're thinking 5 cycles equals 7.5. So we've changed this 8-hour scenario. Then you can start to chop your day up and have some rhythm to it. So you've got timings instead of just randomly putting an alarm on at a certain time. And also things you don't understand about your chronotype to how you start your day and how you manage it. So the answer to the question is, once we redefine it and you apply it as being the first pillar that sets everything up so that you eat better food, you hydrate better, your training gets better because you're approaching it from that pillar. So the success factor is, I've been working with, some of the most elite, high achieving sports people and organizations all around the world. And you can see some of them are just achieving things that most other humans have never done before. And do it, most importantly, consistently. That's the bit. It's all right peaking one afternoon or peaking for a particular period. But this subject sleep is about human recovery performance, optimizing it, changing your perspective of it, doing it in not a completely different way, just to redefine. And when you do it, that's why they call it game changers, right? Common little world that we all use. But this process is actually, we just go, wow, we've just broken another world record. We've just gone faster. Or we've dominated a sport for the last 4 years, And it's actually, I'm in my sort of 60s now. I've been doing it for over 2 decades. I've been doing it a long time. The people we're having more influence over is what you classify as the younger generation. The younger generation just dive into this for fun. It's like, they just love it, They just love it because it gives them something that they can really have in their everyday life that can try to cope with the enormous challenges that they face, both positive and negative.
Awesome. All right. Well, how can people get in touch with you, buy your book, get additional coaching? What do you offer?
Yeah. sportsleepcoach.com is the place to go. We are constantly, we've got loads of blog posts. We've got loads of podcasts that I get onto, loads of videos onto YouTube and stuff like that. We're always doing little simple ones with me and stuff. We've got some easy access tools, low budget, read my book or listen to it. It's in 16 languages around the world. So if you've got any language issues, you'll find a language somewhere. Little audible courses where I take you on a little 10-session step. There's one-to-one coaching, which is not scary. You just fill out a profile questionnaire. I have a look at it, assess it against all these things. We have a quick 60-minute chat, and off you go for the rest of your life. So if you jump on there, don't be frightened by, we're elite sports sleep coaches. All I'm actually doing is applying some very logical techniques and understandings to elite sports people who take it on board quicker than most. So,
yeah, but it's accessible and available to everyone, so you can maximize.
If you're a human being and you sleep,
Love that British humor.
And you try and sleep. I think the thing just to finish is because, you know, without the slides, I had to run around. The thing that I'm seeing quite a hell of a lot more, it's not necessarily pandemic year and all that sort of stuff, or period in time, is that you've got so much access that they're in our fingertips, right? We've got access to so much stuff. And if we start, you know, tapping in certain things, we get attacked by the algorithms with all this sort of stuff. So I see a lot of people who try to self-coach themselves, try to self-medicate themselves, try to sort things out themselves, right? And what happens is we've got a massive growing addictive behavior in people accessing sleeping tablets, melatonin supplements, little cultural things, caffeine overdosing, things that just don't work, right? They just make it worse, you know? So I think we'd always put that message out to people, is to be very careful and conscious of doing things that are unsupervised.
Yeah. And I was listening to Dr. Huberman. He talked about melatonin, and just because the body produces doesn't mean that you should be getting it at the store and it has some bad effects. So you never know the percentage that you're truly getting. And
no, I mean, I had people, you know, getting melatonin supplements for, you know, fathers and mothers getting melatonin supplements from outside of countries where it's not allowed, you know, in certain doses, but they were giving it to their young kids, trying to help them sleep, and just without any prescription. And like you just pointed out, the knowledge of some of these things is they were taking them morning, midday, and afternoon. That's the worst point in time you want to be taking them. They also thought that by taking it, it would overcome all the things they've been doing throughout their day. It doesn't, you know. So it's a bit like blue light, which always fascinated me, because blue light in daylight, the energy wave, is just an amazing thing for a human, right? Amazing. And yet all we were hearing is blue light is bad.
Blue light blocker. And yeah, you need it during the day to wake up and to be productive.
Everybody's getting the impression blue light's bad for you, when actually it's amazing, you know. So I think that's the challenge of, you know, we've got so much at the end of our fingertips that suddenly you can find somebody who's gone down, you know, a particular route. And it's a bit like the tip of the iceberg. Nobody knows what's going on in their little world. You know, and even from an elite athlete, because I'm doing this all the time, webinars, corporate stuff, business, you know, athletes. So I've started taking sleeping tablets. I take 2 tablets a night, and you know, so what do you think about that, Nick? And all it is, it's a bit like you saying naps, Anne, and the perception somebody has of sleep. It's just not important, and you just do it when there's nothing else to do. Well, that's not an approach for the 27th world, is it? When you come back and go, well, they're called sleeping tablets, so I'm taking them because I want to sleep. No understanding. So they shouldn't be. They should be called drugs. You know, not sleeping tablets, not like a headache tablet. You know, they're not like that. That's all. It's just like, well, they help you sleep, don't they? And no. So I think there's lots of stuff that everybody is the same with technology. You know, suddenly we've gone from no education, certainly in this health pillar, no education at school, parents don't pass it on, completely random approach. We're getting a lot better at it now because it's become more focused. There's more, but in the scheme of things, we're on step 1 of sort of like early schooling about the knowledge of this process. And then suddenly we've got trackers tracking it. So there's already an anxiety stress related term called orthosomnia for people looking at sleep data, when actually it's not going to change their day at all. It's just, I didn't get enough of this, I didn't get enough of that, I didn't get enough of this. You know, so in other areas where we track data, we've got so much knowledge and we're so much down the line with those things that it's okay. You know, Fitbit, 10,000 steps, easy stuff, heart rate tracking, whatever, it's all good stuff and we can all get involved with that stuff. But suddenly you get parents and athletes and pilots and surgeons and nurses going like, whoa, are you ever going to get to a point where you're tracking your data on sleep and it tells you can't take your kids to the school or go to the surgery and be a surgeon? It ain't going to happen. It won't ever get to that criteria. So you take your whole emphasis away and stop worrying about what's happening when you're out of control and your brain is while you're actually asleep, and focus on what you do in those first 3 phases of the day when you are awake and you are active. So don't think about sleep in a nocturnal way. Think about it. What have you done throughout your day? And that's why when you come up with, I have a controlled CRP nap that helps me with my whole process, you wouldn't have had that conversation with anybody even 5 or 6 years ago. They just wouldn't have it. When you're quite happy to expose it to the rest of the world, that you actually take time out to recover during the day, because it helps you go faster, be quicker, not waste valuable time doing things in the wrong way, better mood, better motivation, eat properly. Have all listen.
And it doesn't impact my sleep. Taking that recovery time does not change. I'm in bed at the same time and I wake back up at the same time. And I'm blessed that I am a morning person, or I've become I follow. I'm actually, and I go outside and get when the sun's rising, I try to be outside to capture that light. When the sun is setting, to capture that light so that my rhythm is in alignment. And I'm going to make the mental, because I love sleeping outdoors and the outdoors. So I love the recommendation that you made about, the bedroom and changing that environment in my head. So,
it's not me being clever or coming up with some new thing, is it? I mean, it's quite simple that whether you do these things or not, because not everybody wants to be, but they still understand because they know people in their lives who do it. So you go out into the woods and by the lake, you camp, and there's nothing there that you've got at home. No security from the tent, no comforting things, and suddenly you just become, wow. I think the little one for everybody is if I just grabbed hold of your arm after a busy morning and we just went and sat by the river or the coast outside on the bench by the tree just for 5 or 10 minutes, suddenly life's not that bad, is it? And they're already knowing that the speed that light can get that serotonin back up again or keep it to the nicest level is just much quicker than we ever thought. And that's why it's almost like stepping outside. It's not necessarily about the fresh air and deep breathing. Oh, it's nice to be outside just for a few minutes. That light is also kicking in as quickly. Yeah. So when you actually what sort of effect it has on organizations that lead sport, well, they're just achieving much more than they ever used to and more confidently, not being intimidated by it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate it. Everyone in the comment section, you can see the call to action to get to Nick's website, his program, his book, and really appreciate you sharing some time and all your knowledge and information with us today or this evening for you. You're going to down the line to go to sleep yourself. So thank you.
Oh, I had my nap earlier, so I'm going to be rocking and rolling for a fair few hours later.
Splendid. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
And